Howdy everyone, I'm Taz Thornton. Today I want to talk about something that I've not really talked about in any depth before. I want to share with you a story that I've kind of skirted around the edges of, but something that is really powerful that I think might help you grow. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm in the gym working out, those ideas pop in. I'm still in my gym gear, forgive me that, but I promise I've worked out enough to be worked up enough to give you a cracking story. So most of you who have followed my progress up to now, who know about my drivers, what I've been through, will know that some of the abuse I went through, the suicide attempts, the challenges, some of the life problems that hit me that I carried for so long drove me to do the work that I do today. That's as a coach, a speaker, an author. I wanted to use some of the challenges that I'd been through and help people who are going through some of their own troubles, to use my story to give them hope, motivation, inspiration, determination, just a little bit of faith, really, that they could get through, that maybe I hit that metaphorical brick wall so they didn't have to. So that for me includes domestic abuse. It includes struggling with coming out. It includes trying so desperately to commit suicide by accident that I ended up breaking my back in 3 places. And although that big overarching goal I talk about, or intention, I'm much bigger on intentions than goals, because to me, intentions are more holistic. Intentions are goals with soul. I can see I've got some live viewers now. Thank you. Please do wave, say hello. It's good to hear you all. If you haven't clicked the StreamYard link and okayed it, I'll get you up anonymously. It won't give me your name, so forgive me if I don't address you all one by one. I think my phone's telling me that's Serena, so hi, Serena. Although my big overarching why, my big driver is this idea to help, enable, inspire, and motivate so many people using some of my own backstory together with the tools that I have from working for 10 years with shamans and medicine people and NLP and coaching and getting to the top of the corporate tree, all of that stuff. Hi, Sonia. There's something I haven't talked about in any real depth. There's another driver that actually propelled me, that gave me a really massive kick up the backside. And for those of you wondering, no, it's not the Huntington's disease diagnosis I was given. Well, I have this potential to get it. It's not the 25% chance of getting Huntington's disease I once wrote about. It's not that. It's something far closer to my heart, ironically. I want to talk about my wife. I want to talk about Asha Clearwater. Some of you will know her. We have been together for 20 plus years, and she is genuinely the light in my life. She is the space between my heartbeats. She is the reason I get out of bed in the mornings and gives me the courage to then go and pursue that bigger goal. But what some of you won't know is some of the tougher times that Asha went through, and I've chatted this through with her. I've asked her permission to share this, and it's all good. A few years back, Asha went through a real crash of her own. It was on the back of some real family divisions, and without going into the small print and the finer detail of that, it essentially surrounded Asha and I being together. Some of the members of Asha's family are very much ensconced in the church and have a massive issue with a same-sex couple. They described us, in fact, as this little arrangement with exactly that hand movement. So she had some big decisions to make there. She got to the point where she could either keep going for that kind of dog medicine some of you will have heard me talking about on the medicine path, or walk away. And although she still loves her family dearly and deeply, and she'd always be there for them if they needed something, she would always be at the end of the phone or at the end of her motorway. She'd get in a car and help them if need be. She took the decision to just step away so that she could fully embrace and live her life and step into her own power, which was really difficult for her. But other things were going on as well. On the back of that, it got to the point where Asha lost both of her parents, and her mum and dad, I've got to be honest, they were amazing with us. They didn't have any of those issues. They called me their second daughter. I called them mum and dad. They were absolutely brilliant, amazing. It was like having a second pair of really loving, really salt of the earth, brilliant, accepting, inclusive parents. They were beautiful people. On top of all of that, so she stepped away from some of the family that she dearly loved and that was such a big part of her life. She'd gone through this massive transition of just being with me. She'd gone through the loss of both of her parents. She'd gone through a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. She'd supported me through my dad dying. She'd supported me through my breakdown. And when all of that started to stack up, I talk about when you don't deal with the issues properly at the time, when we think, I'll deal with it later, I'll push it down, I'll just carry on, which we all do. Eventually, they're going to come back and bite you on the backside. And it got to the point where they all hit her at once. She got to that age where some of you will recognize this. She got to this age where hormones were starting to get a bit weird. She was in perimenopause. She was struggling desperately with depression. She was stressed, and she hit a breakdown of her own. And on top of that, and I am absolutely convinced that the two are linked, she had a relapse with her multiple sclerosis. And at the time we were hiding it because Asha didn't want anyone to know. But we went through a period where Asha wasn't able to walk properly. It started off being quite gentle. We could hide it if we went to a networking event, for instance, and there were steps. She'd ask me to walk up first so she could kind of cling to the back of me and hide the fact that she was struggling to get her legs to move. But it got worse and worse and worse. She couldn't walk properly. She was doubly incontinent again, that we had right at the beginning when she was diagnosed. And it was just a really, really horrendous time for her. And I was doing my best to support her. But what's important to recognise is that up until that point, when I first left corporate, so I've been self-employed since 2010. And for the first few years, I was kind of coasting. Ash's business was Turquoise Tiger. It was full service social media, PR agency. We were delivering lots of training. I was working with Ash pretty much full time to help her deliver that. And I was kind of playing with my coaching on the side because that was okay. Because, Tiger was paying the bills. It was nice work to do. I was kind of interested in it. It wasn't my heart's passion, but I could just start to experiment with my coaching and do a little bit here, a little bit there, help some friends out, do some stuff for free. And all that was great until Ash's stress and breakdown hit. And it got to the point then where we had a few clients that weren't doing her any favors. She was struggling with trying to juggle everything. I was dropping some of my stuff and trying to catch the ball she was dropping because she was so poorly. And it got to the point where two of her biggest paying clients turned into what I would now affectionately refer to as ask-holes. They'd ask lots of questions, they'd ask her advice as a pro, and then when it came to it, they'd either have a change of heart or they'd be worried about upsetting people with some of the PR they'd put out, and they'd turn it all around again and undo the story she created and turn it into what was essentially an advert. So of course the magazines wouldn't run it, the newspapers wouldn't run it, or it ran and it got absolutely no hits if it was on social. So it got to the point where as much as she felt that her background and her training was in journalism, PR, marketing, she was bloody good at it, coupled with everything else that was going on, and coupled with the fact that people it was in the beginning stages of social starting to grow. People weren't quite brave enough yet to put their head above the parapet and to risk being shot. We now know that, of course, that works. Think about Marmite, love it or hate it is a brand. I wouldn't mind being 50p behind Marmite. But people were scared. People were scared that they'd put messages out there, they'd rattle the cages too much, and they might lose clients. They weren't yet switched on to the fact that what they'd actually do would be really to filter out the clients that weren't right for them, and they'd really cement those good, brilliant, trusted advocate kind of clients that they wanted. So we took the decision, on top of everything else, to sack off Ash's two biggest paying clients, and we'd step things back. And she would start to reinvent her business in a shape that suited her more, in a way that we could replace the anxiety and fill it with joy. It's how we got to the point where today she only does PR for a handful of causes that she really feels passionately about, that she's aligned with. And the rest of the time she does content coaching and training, which is much better for her. And she's happy now. She's well. She's walking again. We changed her diet thanks to working with Adam Stevens. She got her use of her limbs back. She's happy, she's healthy, and her business is thriving. But when all that hit, remember, I had been coasting. I had been kind of playing with my own potential. And suddenly, when it got to the point where my wife was ill, the center of my world was falling to pieces. And in order to keep her together and keep her happy and help her to mend, we had to strip away. We chose. I'm not going to say we had to, because that takes our power. We chose to strip away some of the layers of stress that were only making her worse. Suddenly, I was in a position where I needed to pull my finger out. I needed to stop playing at business, and I needed to make it work. I needed to somehow, almost overnight, move from somebody who was talking about brand and talking about personal brand and talking about visibility and coaching people, talking the game but not really walking it because they need to, into someone who was living it, breathing it, and not just telling people how to, but actually creating it for me. And that was scary. That was really scary, because the world that we'd created, that was our financial stability, was crumbling, was being stripped away. Okay, so that we could rebuild. But my little part of the business back then was tiny comparatively. So what did I do? I hit things really hard. I went through a couple of years where I was absolutely burning the candle at both ends. Suddenly, I recognized this was my wake-up call. This was looking at somebody that I love with all my heart and thinking, I've got to pick this up. I've got to take some of the stress away for my wife. And you would always have this business partnership, but now I needed to pick up and take the slack. I needed to do something, just as when I had my breakdown and left corporate, she supported me. It was my turn now. I had to step up to the plate, and I needed to do it quickly and forcefully and fiercely with everything in my body. I remember having a coffee with one of my best mates, Phil Croshaw of Geeky Group, who was best man at my wedding, and pouring out to him that I just didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what to do to how to help Ash. I didn't know how to build the business, and he just looked at me and said, Taz, you're gonna have to pick this up and make it work. You can do it. You can make it happen. And I did. So what did that mean? It meant that I threw myself into networking, both online and off. I threw myself into visibility. I upped my content. I upped my passion. Let me tell you, when you up your levels of necessity plus vision, plus determination, plus really having something you care about, you up your levels of necessity and you start to create far more success. If you up your levels of necessity and drive and determination and absolute effort, you will start to create success. So I upped my networking, I upped my online presence. I started creating more blogs, more articles, more live streams. I started volunteering to guest on more podcasts. I started speaking more. I was turning up to the opening of an envelope. I wrote both my books. I absolutely hit the ground running. And let me tell you, I managed to turn my business around in terms of visibility and income, from negligible to something really meaningful, essentially in a matter of weeks. So although I've been self-employed since about 2010, I often tell people that to build my visibility to the level that most of you know within that time frame, it was only about the latter 4 years that I started to really hit it and really make a difference. And that did me a real favor, because more than anything else, it allowed me to really bring my passion up for the things that I cared about. And it's scary. The scary thing is stepping away from the things that perhaps don't fire you up as much, but you know are safe and bringing in the income, to absolutely taking a leap of faith and recognizing that if we absolutely empower our passion, if we get so turned on to something, so super invested in something, we can move mountains. We can move mountains. And of course, to cut a long story short, by the time we'd got to the point where my income was coming in and we were doing okay and it was holding us, Asha was starting to heal. I'd been able to take the pressure off her, and she was able to rebuild her business into the shape that it is today, where she's an amazing content coach and speaker and trainer with a bit of PR that she enjoys doing. And she found her wellness again. So it got to the point where we started out working together. And then through necessity, we had to separate our businesses out. And that was a painful process too, to the point now we both have our own businesses. We both have our own passion. We are both running successful businesses. And every now and then now we can come back together again. And it's healthier. We sometimes run workshops and training together. We have our Unleashed program that we run together now. But it was only through that painful process of allowing ourselves to let go of the stuff that wasn't working that we were able to recreate and build the stuff that was. So this is one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about telling you to get a reality check over your why. You know, I love Simon Sinek. I think that book, Find Your Whys, it's amazing. It's a brilliant book. But before he wrote that book, none of us were running around saying, what's your why? What's your why? What's your why? And I've kind of joked about it in the past and said that, for the kind of the marketing gurus and the coaches, the why has kind of become the noughties version of the Filofax in the 80s. We'll walk around waving our why. Say, I've got my why. Look at my why. Look at the size of my why. Do you know what? Do you know your why? Oh, you don't know your why. Oh, really? Well, I've got a why. Look at mine. And that idea that I can use what I've been through to help and empower others is still my big overarching why. That's why I get onto stages. It's why I create my speaker training. It's why I grab every media opportunity I can. It's not for me. It's to reach those people. But if we hadn't been through that situation where Asha was breaking, where the center of my world was falling to pieces, I might still have been coasting and thinking about that big whys. That's a nice ideal. But when you find something closer to home, something more heart-based, something that's a real driver. If I hadn't done that, we wouldn't have been able to cover our bills. I've talked to you about the time where we were surviving on car boots for a while. That was kind of an earlier phase when we were building Tiger up. But this was huge. Imagine that. Imagine trying to hold your wife through grieving, through a breakdown, through severe depression, and through losing the use of their legs, and then all the stress of both trying to get, I call it vegan plus. The diet we went on to help her get her mobility back was whole food, plant-based, oil-free. We cheat a bit now, but at the beginning, that was a massive sea change. Somewhere, if you search for it, you'll find a blog I wrote saying coming out as non-vegetarian. I was confirmed meat eater. But now, again, that's another driver. I look at my wife. I look at the fact that she's walking, she's healthy, she's happy. I don't need that steak. So why am I telling you this? I want you to, yes, hold on to that big why. If you have a vision of something amazing you want to create, something massive and inspiring, something that scares you, sure, I have that too. Hold on to it. But I need you to raise your levels of necessity. This is where this came in. My wife was breaking. We needed to cover the bills. We needed to sack off the stuff that was covering the bills in order to save her and help her to rebuild, which meant my levels of necessity for bringing in money and building my business suddenly, if you looked at it on like a heart monitor chart, it would have been boom, 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 massive. And we can all recreate that. You don't actually need to get to a point where somebody you care about, somebody you love is poorly, but you can raise your levels of necessity anytime you choose. It was raising those levels of necessity in my life that got me to the point where when I thought I'd been giving my all, I'd been playing with it. I'd been scratching the surface. I'm going to say something really brutally honest now to you. A lot of the people out there who are saying they're not getting the impact with their business, the marketing isn't working, they haven't got the clients, it's because you're not putting in enough effort. You're not. How many times are you posting on social? How many times are you sharing? How much are you going after those PR opportunities? How readily are you sharing your story, your drivers, your motivation? How readily are you turning up to do networking? And now I know it's online. I'm filming this through kind of coronavirus and the lockdown situation. How often are you showing up? And if you're not showing up, you're not putting enough effort in. If you're not on LinkedIn at least once a day, if you're not tweeting, if you're not Facebooking, if you're not Instagramming, TikToking, if you're not blogging, you're not writing articles for magazines, for Medium, you're not doing guest blogs, you're not doing live streams, you're not doing video, you're not grabbing speaking opportunities, you're not building relationships with your local newspapers and local magazines to be seen there. If you are not developing yourself, you're not applying yourself to personal development. If you can't afford a coach, or you believe you can't afford a coach yet, read books that will show you. There are a gazillion and one brilliant self-help books and business development books. I could give you a list. That's just one of them. If you are not 100% pushing yourself to succeed, then you don't want it enough. If you haven't raised your levels of necessity enough, then don't come crying to me that your business isn't working. It's because you're not applying yourself enough. You are ticking boxes in your head. Yeah, done that, still not working. Let me tell you this. When you have tried everything and it's still not working, you ain't tried everything. You haven't. Now, let me just let me put in a little bit of clarification here. The level of efforts I was putting in at the time to make my business go from zero to hero, from kind of coasting to something quite significant, that level of work, of application, of effort was not sustainable long term, but it did give me the rocket fuel I needed to create the business, the success that we enjoy today. If your house is on fire and you're trying to get the kids out and the pets out and your partners out and all the things that matter to you out, you're going to concentrate your energy so much to clear so much out of that house in a short amount of time. And yet, if you were moving house and you needed to clear, that same level of movement might take you weeks. Necessity breeds more energy, more doability, more actionability, focused, positive action. Now, let me give you one other little thing to bear in mind too. Remember that caveat, you can't sustain that long term, but you can create more momentum than you have at the moment. The other thing I want to just touch on briefly is when I was in that stage and people could see that I was struggling, that I was tired, that I was burning the candle at both ends, frankly, up to the end of burnout myself, I had lots of well-meaning people telling me to slow down. And I love them all immensely. They're all amazing people. But let me tell you this. It's very, very easy for people who are either financially secure or retired, or even people who are maybe in the benefits system, so know that whatever they do, they're going to get an amount of cash coming in every month. It's very easy for people who are either in their comfort zone with cash or financially secure or retired and getting a regular income to tell you to slow down. If somebody who is financially secure tells you to slow down and you know you need to keep your foot on that accelerator, then just balance that. They were right. I did need to slow down, but back then I did not give myself the luxury of slowing down, because the luxury of slowing down right then was the difference between my wife finding her wellness again and paying our mortgage and paying our bills. We were that far onto the wire, and it was raising necessity that did it. So everybody is right. You cannot work like a robot long term. It's unsustainable. You will kill yourselves. But there will be times in your life, there will be those emergency situations, those emergency spikes where you can give far more effort to get more done. In the same way, we see there were these videos of, people, mothers lifting cars off their kids, those feats of strength we see when an emergency is playing out. So I'm not telling you to burn yourselves out, but I'm telling you that you don't have to wait for that emergency to hit to level up your levels of necessity, your levels of enthusiasm, and your levels of effort. You can't do it all the time, but I bet you can give more effort than you're giving now. So now I put a lot of effort in now. I do a crazy amount of work now, but I still give myself downtime. My pattern now is I work solidly up 3 weeks of the month. I'm on it. Every Tuesday is my admin day, so that's light duties day. I take weekends off. Sometimes I'm still doing social and stuff, but weekends off unless I'm running a training workshop. The last week in every month of my diary is scheduled out, and that's me time to rebuild, to chill. So I still have my foot on that throttle, but I've learned now how to build it in downtime. So how else do I get my energy up? I read. I digest, I develop myself, I keep my mind active. I make sure I'm giving my mind a brain gym. That means I'm reading self-development books. It means I'm working with my coach. It means I'm doing some of the online development programs that my coach in the US has provided that I get in there and learn from. It means I exercise regularly. I work out regularly. I work twice a week with a PT, and thank God I can get back there again. I have an exercise bike at home I can get onto. I have little home weights and resistance bands and a pull-up bar in the door. I do work out at home. I drink lots of water. And yeah, of course we cheat occasionally, but I eat relatively healthily. You've got to make sure that you have your physical energy in check, you have your mental and emotional energy in check, you have your spiritual energy in check, and you've got to make sure you're surrounded by good people. Asha and I are very, very lucky. We know that. We have the kind of relationship where we could be together 24/7 and never get bored. We're so lucky that I got locked down with the one person I'd happily spend every moment of every day with. But we still make sure that we're doing our own things. I do prayer regularly. I'm not religious, I'm deeply spiritual, but yeah, I pray regularly. Prayer is not a religious device. Prayer existed before religion. It's about gratitude, mindfulness, being in the moment. Having a prayerful attitude is not the same as being tied to a religion. I meditate regularly. I set my intentions regularly. I think of all the things that I'm grateful for regularly. I do my appreciators every day. I do my journey work. I do my spiritual work. I write. I journal. And between all of that, I'm marketing. If I'm not with a client, I'm not doing my stuff. Between everything else, I'm on social and I'm marketing. And when I say I'm marketing, it doesn't mean I'm doing by my stuff. I'm thinking, how can I serve people and how can I put some content out to help them? That's how you're going to build things. When I went from that period of necessity, that sharp spike, I didn't go mad, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. I started to show up regularly. I became ubiquitous. I started to show up and show people how I could help them. And then they wanted to book me to work with them. I ran workshops and put effort into filling them. I filled my coaching. And gradually through that process as well, I've been able to put my price points up because I've learned more. I'm worth more. I deliver more value. And frankly, I'm in greater demand. But if I had not had that period, that peak period of necessity to kick me up the backside and make me get out there and create a business that was sustainable, that worked, that was profitable for the good of my relationship, of my home, of somebody I love more than anything in my life, I might still be coasting. So I'm going to leave you with that thought. Make sure your balance is there. Make sure you're taking enough downtime. Don't become a workaholic to the point where you're not actually giving yourself time to breathe, to learn, to grow, to develop, to smell the roses, to smell the coffee. But you don't need to wait for somebody to be ill. But I guarantee you can up your levels of necessity for your business whenever you choose. And if you're just doing a couple of posts on social a week, and if you're just, waiting for the work to drop into your lap, that's not because the work ain't there. It's because you're not putting the effort in. I'm Taz Thornton. I hope that helps. I cannot unleash your awesome for you, but I can open some doors and give you a little bit of guidance. I hope today's video has done just that. Remember though, it's that old analogy. I can't do sit-ups and build your abs. You got to do it. And if I hadn't had that kick up the backside, wouldn't have been building mine either. I hope that helps. Get out there, make it happen, up your levels of necessity, up your levels of effort, find somebody who needs you. Who is it that needs you to bring your A game? Is it your wife? Is it your kids? Is it your partner? Is it your family? Is it a cause? But don't think you've got to focus just on that great big umbrella why. Find something closer to home that matters to you. Maybe it's your kids. Maybe it's getting your kids that new pair of trainers they want. Maybe it's taking your kids on a road trip across the United States once COVID's clear. Maybe it's getting to the point where you can give your parents private healthcare regardless of politics around that. Maybe it's paying off your mortgage so that your family can relax and you can start actually to enjoy quality time. Whatever it is, find something that you can focus on that will help you to build that necessity. And that's how you'll do it. Take care.